Beautiful. The singing of America the Beautiful.
Good morning. I would like to welcome members of the Board of Education, Dr. Mustick, Mr. Woods, Dr. Ferraro, Mrs. Lichtenstein, teachers, parents, friends, and the graduating class of 1996. This year was our last year in the middle school. It is amazing how fast years end and new ones begin. The whole trip was similar to sailing a ship. When we first entered, it felt like stepping on board a new vessel. We learned the ropes from our captains, enduring storms and advancing towards our goals even when facing unfavorable winds. We worked as a team like the crew aboard a ship. The voyage became more challenging as we learned to sail in the open sea. Sure, there were a few dangerous storms and hazardous weather conditions, but cooperation, perseverance, and the guidance of our experienced captains led us to a successful cruise. The distant shore of the high school looms in sight. We are now ready to disembark and venture into a new world, securing the knowledge that our sailing ability will prepare us for future trips. The class of 1996 awaits our new admiral, Dr. Ferraro, to welcome us aboard. Now I would like to introduce Dr. Peter Mustick, Superintendent of Schools.
Good morning. Thank you all for braving the weather this morning on this very special day. Today we come together to celebrate the success of our 1996 middle school graduates. The theme that I've been celebrating throughout the district today, Graduation Day, is excellence and being first. This group of young leaders is the first class of Rye Neck Middle School that will be entering a national Blue Ribbon high school. For those of you unfamiliar with the significance of this recognition, let me share with you that our high school was one of only 266 high schools selected nationally to receive this honor. As the President of the United States, Bill Clinton, said during the presentation, there is no more important challenge than the education of our young people. He challenged educators, parents, and communities alike to raise the standards for all students, to ensure not only competence, but excellence. He challenged students to go the extra mile, to work hard, and to meet the new standards. As I reflected on what we have accomplished and our future goals, I'm pleased with the new direction our schools are taking, and I'm confident that we are providing the best environment possible for all of our students. I had the opportunity last week to see just how successful we really are. At an annual Scepter Awards Assembly, a number of our students were recipients of honors, not just for their innate abilities, but for their willingness to develop their talents through hard work. Learning is hard work. It requires that extra review or the extra study time, but once accomplished, the rewards are plentiful. As I walked through the building that evening, I was pleased to see 40 students in a language review class, a group of students working on their musical selections for graduation, performance demonstrations by our 10th grade English students, a review class in mathematics with over 20 students. All of this was at 7:30 in the evening. This doesn't include the students and the teachers who were in at 7:30 a.m. reviewing because all the evening time slots had already been booked. Excellence is what you as students of the Rye Neck Middle School have learned to strive for. It is the only acceptable goal for you as individuals and for you as a class. Your parents, your teachers, and your community have supported your work by helping you to identify and develop your talents. But as you know, education is a participatory activity, one that requires hard work, continual practice, things that only you can provide. As a school district, we learned this year through the Blue Ribbon process, application process, and we had to be willing to document and then be graded as to our competencies in a very public forum. This was extremely difficult, not only for the amount of preparation, but for the anxiety of failing. Through the process, I was reminded how important it is for us as adults to take on new challenges. For it is only through challenges that we grow. It is only through challenges that we learn about who we are and how we can handle success and failure. As adults, the more we're willing to model this behavior for our students, the more successful they and our schools will be. The dedication of our Rye Neck staff, our principal, and the tenacity of our Board of Education members, the support of our parents and our community come together to create such an environment for our students. An environment that is designed to encourage excellence, but one that requires hard work. An overriding vision, like the one that our president has set, is important. But great goals are reached in stages. So strategies also must proceed step by step. Overcoming obstacles one at a time builds competence and confidence within an organization and for individuals. As football coach Lou Holtz once said, I don't think we can win every game, just the next one. And that's how champions are made. Throughout this year, day by day, staff and students alike have risen to new challenges and become champions, winning one game at a time. The competencies they have achieved as middle schoolers far exceeds graduates of just a few years ago. Their skills in science, math, and language arts have been developed with an eye on a more challenging world. Many of our middle schoolers have started a number of high school Regents level courses and are succeeding in challenges they never thought possible. These young leaders are also serving their community through their volunteer efforts in the Builders Club and the Student Council. Most recently, members of this group worked with me to provide a special social for our Gold Card members, and I have to say it was one of the best evenings we've had all spring. For our graduates, it means they're about to enter a school that is going to expect more. The standards have been raised by the students that have gone before you, and I will assure you the standards will continue to be raised as we move to increase the academic rigor throughout our district. Before we found out the results of the Washington site visit, I pretty much convinced myself that winning really wasn't that important, that the process was by far the most important part of the journey. After we won, I can tell you that winning felt pretty good. Being first is important. It enables you to be remembered. It helps you set the standards for everyone else to follow. Think about the #1 sports team in your league, or the best students in your class, or the best performers you have seen. What makes them the best? It's that they're able to take the talents that they're given and add hard work. That is what sets them apart. That is what makes them first. This is what sets the standards for everyone else to follow. Each and every one of you, regardless of your abilities, has something we can excel at. Some special talent where you can be #1. Work over the next years in high school, work to identify the talents, and then work to make sure you're the best. Congratulations.
It is my pleasure to introduce Mr. Ed Woods, new middle school principal.
Thank you. And let me add my voice to those congratulating our graduates and welcome all of you here on this grim day weather-wise, but a very happy occasion indoors. I thought it would be valuable to take a few minutes this morning, particularly for our graduates, to talk about the purpose of this ceremony. The procession that you just witnessed, the musical accompaniment, the special clothing, all of it is really designed for a particular reason. And let me suggest to you that it's really aimed at 3 groups of people assembled here today. First and foremost, for our graduates. This ceremony is designed to emphasize and to dramatize how important each of you are to your parents, to your family, to your teachers, and to your friends. It's designed to dramatize and to show an important turning point in your life, a rite of passage, to celebrate your success and a harbinger, a predictor of a bright and successful future. For parents here, the ceremony is really designed to say simply, well done. Through the ups and downs and uncertainties of being a parent, this is a moment when all the love, work, and effort really pays off. I was thinking, of all things, of Mayor Koch, who was famous for saying to everybody he came into contact with, "How am I doing?" And it occurred to me that it's a question that every parent, myself very much included, asks themselves throughout the process of parenting. And really, one of the major purposes of the ceremony today is to provide you with an answer to that question. How are you doing? Very well indeed. For the school, the ceremony is the culmination of years of hard work and effort by our teachers. Not only here at the middle school, but stretching back to your earlier school experience at Bellows. The graduation ceremony, among other things, is an opportunity for our school to reflect on its purpose, on its mission. What are we doing here? What's the reason for our existence? And as you prepare to leave us, let me express what we hope your experience at the middle school has provided you with, in 3 areas. First, we hope that we have provided you with the essential skills and knowledge to ensure your future success. A facility with language in all of its aspects, and with the fundamentals of mathematics. With a mastery of pivotal concepts in social studies and the sciences. With an appreciation of the arts and of aesthetic endeavor. And with the ability to access knowledge, and this one is particularly important in the modern age, how to pursue research, organize information, and produce quality results. The second area where we hope that we've provided you with is in the area of values. And one hears a lot of talk about values in the public schools, and the fact is we do teach values. A sense of tolerance and respect for other people. A respect for difference. A sense of personal responsibility. A willingness to accept and deal with the results and consequences of the choices that you make. And finally, a sense of the value of work. Not taking the easy way out, not pursuing the path of least resistance. of operating on the premise that whatever is worth having is worth working for. Finally, we hope that we have provided all of you with an overarching sense of optimism, a belief in yourself, in what you can do, in your own potential, and in a positive future for our country and our community. So let me conclude by expressing my personal heartfelt congratulations to all of our graduates and to their families. We hope that your memories of life in the middle school are pleasant and long-lasting. And we hope that we have provided you with the knowledge, the skills, the values, and the sense of optimism that will carry you forward to success in high school and beyond. Best wishes.
Megan Smith will now give us her reflections of the middle school.
Good morning, honored guests. When we entered the 5th grade 4 years ago, we were like small seedlings planted in a new garden. The ground had been prepared for us, and we looked forward to blossoming into our full potential as prize-winning flowers. But we were unsure as to how we would accomplish that. Upon entering the middle school, we were fragile, possessing only our outer coverings and our food sacks, also known as bagged lunches. We didn't know what to do or how to act. We were afraid of being overwhelmed by older and more mature plants, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. As seedlings, we found that in order to thrive, we required sun and water. These were provided by our gardeners that year, 5th grade teachers. We were nourished by Mrs. Trapanese's daily raps and Mrs. Pizzolla's Kodak moments, as well as her math and science tests. Mrs. Colinari taught us how to write an essay and do a research paper, while Mr. Posha helped us memorize our multiplication tables. All of these activities toughened our outer shells and showed the older plants that we were resilient. By the end of 5th grade, our stems aimed steadily upwards and eagerly reached towards the sun. Upon entering the 6th grade, we were offered a foreign language course, which would eventually count as a high school credit, thus adding another leaf to the fast-growing stem of the flower. These special gardeners were Miss Galfone, Miss Liz, Mrs. Caringi, Miss Marcis, and Mrs. Carolini. Much-needed nutrients such as music, art, home and careers, technology, and gym helped to feed the constantly changing buds. Special care was also given by Mrs. Erickson, Miss Casciano, and Mrs. Altman. Although we may have been apprehensive at first about these courses, we survived them, and our roots grew even deeper into the ground. In the 7th grade, the climate changed, and we, the growing plants, began to branch into different areas of the garden, the Giordano and Lichtenstein sectors. I was replanted into the Giordano team, where I continued to flourish. I remember Mr. Tenorello and how he always had a way of making learning interesting by telling funny stories and corny jokes. In Mrs. Giordano's class, we dissected earthworms and learned about evolution. And who could forget Mrs. Blum and her famous Junaus? The newest caretaker of the team, Miss Lichtenstein, taught us about colonial times and the Revolutionary War. Mrs. Walsh and Mr. Cruz added their own special techniques of gardening. By this time, we were entering our last stage of growth, on our way to becoming prize-winning flowers. Our stems were solidified by the friendships we formed and the constant care and guidance we received from our gardeners, Mrs. Lichtenstein, Miss Edelson, Mrs. Pence, and Mr. Martin. Our vines intertwined as we now became the first class of only 8th graders to enter their last year in the middle school together. The orienteering trip helped us branch out into other gardens. At Pound Ridge, we navigated unknown territories in order to return to the original site before the buses left without us. We earned money for our theater trip by selling magazine subscriptions. We did the first ever Stay Awake-a-thon in the gym on a Friday night. 50 of us listened to the harmony of Mr. Tenerello and Mr. Woods as they strummed guitars, after being entertained by our own homegrown 8th grade band. We watched the sunrise over the Rye Neck fields with Miss Edelson and Mrs. Lichtenstein. This enriched our soil. All of this growth has only served to prove to us that we are now ready to be replanted into an even larger garden. Our roots have outgrown our middle school flower beds, and we are awaiting an even larger plot of land, the high school. As I look upon the various flowers that comprise this garden, I understand the end of one growing season is here. Yet this end signaled the beginning of the next. We have gone through so much together. We have survived some flowers being picked and planted someplace else, several harsh winters, and the blazing sun. We are fully bloomed and beautiful. We have cleared away the weeds. All that we have worked for has paid off. What is now proved was once only imagined. Thank you.
I would like to introduce Mrs. Sue Lichtenstein, 8th grade team leader.
I'd like to read to you a quotation that I came across the other day. As I looked at it, I realized that it expressed some of my educational philosophy, and it also reminded me of why being a teacher is still so important to me. I hope that it will also help to explain to each of you why I expect nothing less of each of you than trying to be the very, very best that you can be. It was written by Felix E. Schell. True education makes for inequality. The inequality of individuality. The inequality of success. The glorious inequality of talent, of genius. For inequality, not mediocrity. Individual superiority, not standardization, is the measure of the progress of the world. This graduating class of 1996 is just beginning to realize their individual superiority. As I have watched them grow intellectually as well as physically throughout their 4 years in this building, I have seen many changes take place. As 5th graders, they were happy to be individuals, each striving to find their own place, unconcerned about what everyone else was doing, and whether or not they were doing the same thing at the same time. By the time 6th grade came along, many of your children, and it was still okay to call them that then, were beginning to look around and see that it was easier to conform to what their peers expected of them rather than to be individuals. Being part of the larger group was the way to go. Even as 7th graders, it was vital to be part of the in crowd. They wanted to be like everyone else. For many of them, looking different, getting better grades, or excelling in a certain subject was less important than blending in with the rest of the class. They moved together in packs, whether it was through the halls, attending middle school dances, or sitting in the cafeteria. The middle ground was the preferred place to be. Clothes had to be similar. Certain hairstyles were acceptable and others were taboo. Good grades were okay, but nothing to brag about, unless of course they were something you could achieve without a lot of effort. This year, some major changes have taken place. These students began to realize that each of them had something very unique to offer to the rest of their class. Some individuals had a musical talent, or were artistically gifted. Some were growing into outstanding athletes. Some had an amazing intellectual capacity that was only beginning to be realized. The inequality of success, not mediocrity, was something to aim for. Our middle school is a wonderful place because each one of these students was encouraged by their teachers to develop their special talents. You have heard in their speeches that they found teachers to guide them, mentor them, and coach them. They learned to take what was being offered to them and to develop it in a way that suited them. Several weeks ago, a group of these 8th graders came to me and asked for the opportunity to have a sleepover as a class activity at the end of the year. They had prepared their case well, and like good trial attorneys pleading their case, they convinced me to try and get clearance for this event. After getting the okay from Mr. Woods, I went back to these students and told them that I would be responsible for getting the chaperones, but it was their duty to plan the evening. I am sure that most of the parents have heard that it was a tremendous success. Not only did all of us involved spend a wonderful 12 hours together, but the event was turned into a stay-awake-a-thon to raise money for charity. Last week, I turned $360 over to the Builders Club to be donated to the Make-A-Wish Foundation for terminally ill children. That event was a perfect example for me of how far this class has come. I hope that you will all continue to strive to be outstanding individuals, yet work together as a class to make this school an outstanding example of what true education can be. I wish you happiness, success, and many more beautiful sunrises together. Thank you.
And now the graduate ensemble, Stephanie Renner, Loralee Karpaloff, Lauren Talevi, and Melanie Del Rosa will perform Country Dance by Ludwig van Beethoven. The ensemble is under the direction of Mr. Frank Sari.
Mr. DiMaggio in the audience? Because if he is, can he stand up with Mr. Casaro? At this time, we would like to give a special thank you to two teachers who greatly influenced our years in the middle school. They have helped us to achieve being the best musicians that we can be. When we look back to when we were first beginning to play the first notes on our instruments, it seems hard to imagine that now we have all achieved a place in the high school band. To Mr. DiMaggio and Mr. Casaro, we give our heartfelt thanks for bringing us this far and always encouraging us to take another step forward. Thank you for everything, and see you in the high school.
Casey Maida will now give us her reflections of the middle school.
We, the class of 2000, stand in front of you now on our graduation day. We have wandered through the middle school like travelers embarking on a new journey. We knew we had a destination ahead of us, the high school, but we were unsure of how we would arrive there. With the help of our teachers and friends, we have made it through. In 5th grade, we had not yet started our journey. We were still preparing for it. We were gathering tools and knowledge. All of this information was stored in our bags to be used later on, but we still needed to learn how to navigate through the halls. Just because you can read a map doesn't mean you can get around the obstacles indicated. Many of us students of small stature will remember the important technique of dodging backpacks we learned when venturing out of the middle school lab. With the help of Mrs. Broderick, we also learned how to safely cross the parking lot when going to gym. Our bags were now packed, and we headed off in the right direction with these newly learned skills. The goal of 6th grade was to complete the first half of our journey. Our guides were Mrs. Paley, Mrs. Barron, Ms. Sancherico, and Mrs. Crisworth. Mrs. Paley taught us all about Zeus, Hera, and all the other Greek gods. I think some of us are still trying to figure out how to spell their names. Then, with Mrs. Barron's help, we studied the ancient Egyptians and the not-so-ancient New York Giants. Mrs. Crisworth taught us laboratory room safety with our fashionable plastic goggles. She also showed us how to analyze and observe all experiments we dared to try in class. Ms. Sancherico had the job of teaching us math. She tried to show us the difference between hundred and hundredth while making sure our daily do-nows were completed. Each of our 6th grade teachers contributed something that would help us on the rest of our journey. It was as if the knowledge they taught us was enough to tackle any obstacle we met. Our luggage was now heavier, but necessarily so. In 7th grade, it seemed we had reached a trail we couldn't maneuver. We thought we were prepared, but boy, this sure was hard. The markings were unfamiliar, but when almost all hope was lost, our rescue team came. It consisted of Mrs. Giordano, Mrs. Blum, Ms. Lichtenstein, and Mr. Tinarello. For other fellow travelers, their rescue team was Mrs. Lichtenstein, Mrs. Pence, Mr. Mott, and Ms. Sims West. Our group of travelers was divided into 2 different camps, the Lichtenstein camp and the Giordano camp. The split in the road seemed to be the end for some of us. Our travel partners had been separated from us, but actually, both roads would meet at the other end when reunited in 8th grade. In our separate camps, we met other travelers. They were a bit further in their journey, though. They were already 8th graders. They seemed ominous to us. We thought they were unfriendly, but we were wrong. They understood our journey and wanted to help. They shared their shortcuts with us and deciphered some confusing symbols on our maps. Our teachers were also very helpful. Mr. Tinarello's victory handstands always perked up our spirits, as did his spontaneous guitar ballads. Ms. Sims West's feminist outlook on everything gave us something to think about. Mr. Martin and Mrs. Giordano's guidance through frog dissection lessons was greatly appreciated. Mrs.
Mrs. Blum's overhead was an important tool in our math class, until that is, she broke it. Mrs. Lichtenstein's math projects loomed above our heads, showing different ways to display math problems. Mrs. Pence's Colonial Day is a project her team will never forget, and Ms. Lichtenstein's team will always remember her social studies lessons on the computer. With the most difficult part of our journey completed, we continued on, again as one group, determined to have fun and reach our goal. In 8th grade, we looked at our map and saw we didn't have much further to go. The road was a little bumpy, but the big obstacles had been tackled, and we went on with hope. We were sadly left behind by our elder travelers, but we kept in mind that we'd see them when our journey was done. This year, our teachers are less like guides and more like merchants with knowledge to sell. We were the first class ever to have an 8th grade year without 7th graders, the first group to move on alone without other travelers and without our previous year's guides. With this thought, we followed our map with a newfound confidence that we were up to this new challenge. We were paving the way for future travelers to come. The merchants we met on the way were Mrs. Lichtenstein, Mr. Martin, Mrs. Pence, and Ms. Edelson. They no longer seemed like guides because we felt we'd acquired enough information from the past 3 years of our journey to go on alone. Our 8th grade teachers gave us the strength we needed to keep going. By now, the goal was in our reach. Someone just needed to point us down the final stretch of the road. Mr. Martin was always full of stories about baseball, his cat, or his mountain climbing buddies. He not only taught us science, but some of the beliefs of his heroes, Gandhi and Einstein. Oh, and please, Mr. Martin, what's the 100th monkey again? Mrs. Lichtenstein taught us math. All of us in her sequential class will never forget when she pretended to be an air traffic controller so we would get the concept of foil. Mrs. Pence always had a challenging project that made learning about the Civil Rights Movement or the Great Depression more enjoyable. Ms. Edelson was a new face to all of us. Her teaching of English was always fun and interesting. Our discussions about dress codes were heated, our readings of Shakespeare were comical, and no one thought there was a song about conjunctions until she came along. No matter which teacher you had, you were sure to be having fun while learning. Just ask Ms. Edelson's 8th period class. If they weren't laughing, something was seriously wrong. The goal we had for the last leg of our journey had been reached. We had had fun while learning. Now, full of confidence and knowledge, our journey has ended. We are here now at our destination, graduation. We are about to move on to the high school and a new journey. There, our teachers will again show us the right path to take. We are pleased with our past and have plans for our future. Wish us luck. We are the class of 2000.
Mr. Woods and Mrs. Lichtenstein will now present the diplomas and some special awards.
To expedite matters, it'd probably be helpful if we held the applause to as great an extent as we can to the end. Danny Abramson. Jennifer Akampora. Jamie Angeletta. Lauren Arvonio. Egidio Bianco. Eric Broyce. Nick Bronner. Andrea Burok. Brendan Burke. Lisa Kalarami. Harry Caverly. Michael Colinari. Melanie DeRosa. Camilla Ann DeVito. Robert DiFiore. Andrea Dominguez. Christopher Dinan. Alexis Fabricant. David Flores. Michael Frioli. Andrew Friccione. Carla Greenberg. Jennifer Guadagnolo. Brendan Hook. Nicole Iacovelli. Laura Giuano. Merlene Joseph. Michael Joyce. Amy John. Laura Lee Karpelov. Julie Katz. Raj Khanna. Joanne Lasorsa. Thomas Lupero. Casey Maida. Justin Manstream. Lauren Marchese. Valerie Maselli. Goran Milasevsky. Sho Morimoto. Jennifer Neville. James O'Meara. Gerald Oliva. Amy O'Rourke. Kim O'Rourke. Paula Palancia. Rudy Palace. Elizabeth Pelosa. Susan Petza. Thomas Pareto. Joseph Rinaldi. Stephanie Renner. Erica Rio. Chrissy Rodriguez. Maria Ruiz Diaz. Steven Sanchez. Anthony Saraiva.
Go Anthony!
Sean Sawyer. April Silverman. Megan Smith. Lauren Talevi. Hiab Tessima. Ebony Yizer. Before I turn the middle school class of '96 over to Dr. Ferraro, there are a couple of special awards that we want to give out. These are Presidential Education Awards. And the first series is the President's Award for Educational Excellence. The award was established to encourage students to achieve high academic standards by recognizing and rewarding them for their educational excellence. So those awards go to Daniel Abramson, Lauren Arvonio, Lisa Kalarami, Carla Greenberg, Brendan Hook, Laura Giuano, Casey Maida, Sho Morimoto, Stephanie Renner, Chrissy Rodriguez, and Lauren Talevi. The second group of presidential awards are the awards for extraordinary effort. The purpose of this award is to recognize students who show outstanding educational growth, improvement, commitment, or intellectual development in their academic subjects. It's meant to encourage and reward students who work hard and give their best effort in school. And the first of these to James O'Meara. Joanne LaSorsa. and Michael Joyce. Can we ask everybody to stand for a moment? Dr. Ferraro, I give you the high school graduating class of 2000.
The graduate chorus, under the direction of Mr. Mark DiMaggio, will sing Because You Love Me by Dee Warren. the years in the middle school, it reminds me of the Olympic Games taking place this summer in Atlanta. We, like the athletes, feel the satisfaction that comes from hours of hard work, knowing that all the rigorous training has finally paid off. As the diving competition got more intense and the bar on the pole vault grew increasingly higher, we were encouraged to put more and more effort into the pre-trial events. Now today, we can all look back with a smile, knowing the 4 years of preparation that our coaches guided us through have prepared us for the next hurdle, the high school. We are at our marks, our focus is steady, our pulses race in anticipation for the final heat. The torch has been lit, we are ready for the handoff. The gold medals are in our sights. Immediately following the ceremony, there will be a reception for the graduates and their families in the middle school lab.